All right, what's up?
Yes, there are.
What's going on, Shane? This is Cullahcast number 18, and
Awesome.
say what's up. Who are you, man? Who are you? What are you two?
I am in the beautiful city of Denver, and it's about 73 degrees and sunny, and I'm sitting out on the porch. It's a great day. I'm Shane Wolff. I studied as a clinical laboratory scientist, got a minor in philosophy. I like to do philosophy kind of, as a hobby, personal hobby. I worked as a medical technologist for about 4.5 years in private sector, and have since moved over to work at the Department of Veterans Affairs here in Denver, and I supervise a portion of their laboratory here in Denver.
Wow. Yeah. So that it's a interesting time then for you, I would imagine, because with increased testing, and everyone's talking about testing. So that's essentially what you do. You deal with the equipment that deals with all the different types of tests that a normal clinic would, but just at a VA, right? And so there's probably differences between how you guys run and how normal clinics run, especially now.
Yeah. During normal operations, our particular laboratory, we actually have a lot of like state of the art equipment, far and above. Been able to process it and get our patients' test results out. So we've been doing a really fantastic job with all that.
It's called the Panther?
Yeah, that's it's just an instrument name.
Is it an acronym, or is it?
That's just what they named it. I don't honestly know what that stands for, but
sure.
So they're also working on another type of testing on an instrument called the Cepheid, which is another type of testing of a similar type of methodology, but it's a faster turnaround time. So the turnaround time for running on a Cepheid would be approximately 45 minutes, and that testing can detect sample up to 250 parts per milliliter, which is very, very, very sensitive testing for the type of testing that we're doing. And then that Panther, it's a little bit longer process, but it's more sensitive actually, and it can test and confirm whether there's virus in that sample at 100 parts per milliliter. And typically what you see, just to give some context, what you would see typically in maybe some other types of instrumentation that do the same version or a similar type of this PCR testing, some estimates that I've heard have been that they're able to detect up to 32,000 parts per milliliter, which is a lot less sensitive than what we're currently running at RVA. So we've got a very, very sensitive test with a decently fast turnaround time. We can get close to 200 test results out within an 8-hour shift, which is pretty quick. Once we finally get the Cepheid PCR testing validated, and provided that we get enough kits to be able to run that much, we could do 500 tests a day. Just kind of depends on what our patient volume is going to be.
And is there a demand for that many tests right now, like 500 a day? Or what would ideal? Would you be able to do five? Obviously, ideal would be like 500 in a second, or have 500 people be able to test themselves.
Right. So with our particular type of patient population, because we're only seeing veterans, we actually have far and above what our required throughput is. So we're testing at the rate that they're coming in effectively, and we have capacity to test more than what is coming in.
Sure.
Now, if you were to go to a private sector hospital laboratory, I'm sure that their demand is significantly higher. And I don't know enough about how contracts and using federal facilities as a reference lab would work to say whether or not we could take their samples and run them at our lab. I just don't know enough about that.
Sure. So with this type of testing that you're talking about, the Panther, and you mentioned about the accuracy and efficacy of knowing whether the virus is in this certain type of testing, but what does that test look like? Like how are you taking blood samples? Are you taking like DNA samples? Is it a genetic test? Or?
So these are going to be nasal pharyngeal swabs. So they have a swab with like a little like barb on the end, or like a little brush, and they stick it up your nose, and they kind of do that, and then they put it into viral transport media, and then they send it to the lab. And that's kind of where we pick it up. My team, we handle the receiving of the samples and what we call accessioning, which is basically putting a timestamp on when the lab received it, and then we take it back to the microbiology department, and they do all the processing.
So is it the reason why they're shoving up your nose to get real good respiratory like sampling? Is that
right?
Is that
right? Exactly.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so what? Okay, so then how you just put in a sample, and then to test it, do they have to like treat it somehow, or do they have some chemical that tries to look for something? I guess I don't know if you know the specifics of how the test works.
So if you anybody that's listening, if you're interested in what the type of methodology is, it's called a polymerase chain reaction, and basically what that is the machine will put in, or the kit, the test little cartridge has in it something that is going to be specific to a portion of that virus, and we'll be able to isolate that portion. And there's DNA, RNA replicating type of molecules put into the kit that will amplify that specific section of the virus, and it does that over a cycle, maybe 12 to 30 different cycles of that isolation, selection, and reproduction process. And it's been a long time since I've learned about that, so some of that might be a little fuzzy on the accuracy, but go ahead and toss up on Wikipedia polymerase chain reaction. You'll be able to see what I'm talking about.
That's Polymerase. What's that first word you said? Pulmonary?
Poly. That's a good question. Polymerase chain reaction. So type in PCR in Google, and that should pull it up. That'll tell you the spelling.
So it's poly, not it's something about poly. So.
Poly, yeah. Polymerase. So poly is many, and ace is like enzymes, I guess.
Huh. Yeah. What's your favorite test? Do you have a favorite test, or
my favorite test is
one that you like to think about, or know about, or to tell other people about?
The test of personal discipline. I think is my favorite test.
Yeah, dude, I hear that.
I got off of the bench and chose to do a supervisory type of position because I don't particularly enjoy that type of work.
So you're the test master.
I'm very much more into building a team and building efficiency in the system and managing people and building relationships across the hospital to increase the efficiency and efficacy of what we do at the laboratory. And that's kind of how I see myself. That's at least my goal. I'm trying to make things better for the veterans, because I mean, they put their lives on the line for us, and we should do everything that we can to make sure that we're taking care of them the best that we're able to. So that's my way of contributing to it.
Yeah, well,
personal discipline.
Yes. I mean, the veterans know about that. At least some of going into the Army, that's the type of discipline that you need to take, or the military,
right.
Not just the Army, but yeah, military, I was always, I was always interested in the discipline. I feel like I finally learned some lessons these past 5 years or so. Maybe when I feel like when I got out of college, I knew there's like things people told me about discipline, and I knew about it, and I knew that you're supposed to be doing these things in order to take control of your life, control of your happiness. And stuff is all through like having the discipline to be able to make those decisions and change your behavioral patterns and change the way that you perceive reality like through like actively and it once I feel like I don't know I'm no I'm not like waking up at 3 a.m. and going for 20-mile runs but but like
me either.
But I don't eat sugar when it stares right at me. I go to the grocery store every time I try to avoid it now. But when I go
social distancing, please.
Yeah. Well,
it's working in Colorado.
Yeah, there's an issue with that today. I don't know if you saw the news, but today, it's our election. Yeah. Our election. Oh yeah, everyone saw it, I'm sure. It's a real travesty. It's crazy. Like one hand everyone like the Supreme Court met virtually to make the decision that everyone should go out and vote. Like that's a crazy thing to me. Like how everyone is getting mixed messages from leadership, and it's at a time of crisis. It's like crazy. It's like it's exposing a lot of things that might. I mean, I believe that have been there for quite some time. Flaws in the system or corruptions and malignant in the system that everything is, the gloves are kind of coming off, and people aren't able to come together to make this decision. That shows you that the commonality of this virus and people's health isn't a rallying cry for a certain leadership in Wisconsin, which is crazy. That shows you some weird political philosophy there of like, what does that say when the people are so disenfranchised from their own leadership, quote unquote? I don't know if it's the leadership. I don't know. Some people look to them as they have the authority and the power, right? So like
they're the decision makers. Yeah. I don't know that I've got too much to say about of the local politics of Wisconsin.
Yeah. But safety wise, I mean,
looking to like philosophy, you can find some good answers on maybe what we should be focusing on in times like this.
Right.
And I'm not sure if you've heard of Albert Camus' book The Plague, where he talks about basically a similar type of situation that we're in right now, where a town gets completely overrun by a plague, and the townspeople are asking this doctor, what do we do? And basically his answer is, the only way that we're going to be able to get through this is with basic human decency. And what that means for me is doing my job. And that's what the doctor in the book says. And I think that that's an appropriate approach.
Everyone does their role.
Right. Everybody maintain a sense of decency and recognize that that this is an issue, and that we do have ways of mitigating the problem. Not eliminating completely yet, and I'm not certain that that's going to be available for quite some time. But we do have the ability to remain decent and to make sure that the people who are taking care of us at the grocery store, the people who are small business owners that run a restaurant that are struggling right now, and our healthcare workers, to make sure that people are treated with decency, and that you try to be mindful of those who are around you and in your community, and make sure that you're not, doing something when you can hear that little voice in the back of your head saying this might not be a good idea.
Right.
Don't go visit Granny who's 92 years old with heart failure.
Yeah, write her a letter.
Don't do that. Right. Or call her on the phone. Like,
grandmas love letters. I'm about to write one for my grandma.
They do.
We should write to grandma. I should write to her too. Might as well do 2 for 1. Just write the same thing.
Make sure you sanitize it though. Sanitize it.
Yeah, right.
The virus has been shown to be able to live on surfaces for longer than what normal viruses are able to. So I think phone call probably is a good idea. But I mean, do the decent thing. And,
I'm gonna write it.
And okay, yeah.
I mean, I've heard that. I've heard. I don't know. People can't. I think that's a good call. Just the fucking decency. You know, like that's decency in times of crisis. And I think we're I see. I don't know. I went for a walk down by the river today, and brought this mat that I had and just did some like yoga. I tried to find a good spot. I was like, I'm gonna go by the river and find a good spot and do some yoga, and it was just packed, dude. It was just packed. Everyone was maintaining distance, but like it was full. It was packed, man. Like and I went. I found a good place I could go. I'm like, all right, no one's going up there. So I went up there. I found a good spot by a tree and did some shit. But I was looking around, and there were so many people, and everyone was out because it's a beautiful day here too. It's about to start to storm a little bit, but it's like 60. It's holy shit! It's 72 degrees right now. Oh my god! Like this, it's so gorgeous nice right now here, and everyone's energy here in the spring. You know, when this happens, it's like you can't not go out, and
it's really hard.
You have to go out and just be like, son. Like, it's probably good for our immune system, but at the same time, of course, people are closer to each other. But I saw, like, I don't know, I just saw people, and I was just like, wow, no sports, no bullshit jobs that half these people are going to. Like, everyone's just kind of surviving, and look, everyone's out and happy and thriving. Like, I had this vision in my head of, like, wow, what could society be if every week families and people were allowed to just live their lives and would not have to struggle to just survive, but rather just thrive. And I just live. I just started thinking about that, about like how that would affect everyone, because I just saw it everywhere. I was just like, whoa, people are out, and think of how much they'd engage in their community and the small businesses would thrive. I don't know. Like these time apart from everyone, I feel like we're learning some pretty valuable lessons, and
I think we are. Yeah,
it is still
as a society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think lessons are that we're learning?
I think society is starting to get a little bit of a peek into what life is like for most introverts, which I think has generally been maybe a little bit less of a I don't know, less attention on that group of people. Because for me, being somebody that's fairly introverted, my life has virtually seen no change. I think that getting to understand the value of that time alone that introverts do need. Not that everybody doesn't, but like introverts in particular need a larger proportion of their time spent that way. Getting to see that and like understand what that is, and be able to start to self-analyze and look at your life. I hope that people are doing that. But other lessons, possibly that, you know, there are jobs in this economy that are significantly more valuable and essential than we originally thought.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe my neighbor above me that works at the grocery store should be getting paid significantly more than he is. You know,
the value of things are really being put in perspective.
Right. Like when we use the word essential, what are we actually talking about there? And I think we're learning what that means. I'll tell you what, I wouldn't want to show up at the grocery store at my normal weekly time that I go and have it be closed. That would be devastating to me because I rely on that.
Yeah, man. I don't hunt my own food.
Because, like, I don't grow my own food.
Yeah.
I wish I could. I wish I was in a position in my life where I could start doing that. But, I mean, student loans, man.
Student loans, no land.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stagnant wages.
We're looking at buying a house, but, you know, that's a tough road, too. Like, there's a lot that goes into that. And, you know, the fact that I've had to pay between $500 and $700 a month for basically since I got out of school is certainly not helping, you know?
Yeah, it's almost like, I don't know, for me, it's almost better to just wait. The whole thing is collapsing on itself, I feel like. Now it's like there is no way that it can go back to, like, people keep saying, well, when it goes back to normal, or when it goes back, I don't think it's going to happen like that. I don't think it's never going to be like how it was before. Like, I think we don't even know what
forever changed.
Yeah, I don't think we really know. Like, even just these laws, these stimulus packages. Like, we thought the '08 stimulus thing was controversial and had huge effects on us. Like, we thought 9/11 had huge effects on us. But this thing seems like it's of much greater proportion. Like, it's actually of magnitudes of greater proportion, orders of magnitude. Like we're talking about months of stagnant economy, not just stagnant. Like, almost some of it's at a halt, and it's like we know this is unprecedented. Like, you know, when there's a crash or when there's a hurricane or when there's something, it takes that's a one-time thing. But this is a continual
one location.
Yeah.
This is continual, and it's permeated through the whole nation. It's not just, you know, one city gets hit by a disaster, which obviously is not a good thing, but like this is the whole nation and
the whole world, man.
Based on the last numbers, I mean the whole world, but like
we're not as prepared.
Talking about American society, right? And we're not as prepared. And I mean, the last numbers that I saw, we were at what was it, almost 12,000 deaths. And we were at like almost 400,000 cases. You could fact check those numbers. I know that I'm kind of ballparking it. I know it's not 100% accurate, but I know that we were approaching those numbers.
11,000 as of 5 hours ago, according to ABC News.
Okay, so it was close. I've been looking on the
New York is the largest
website.
Yeah, that's the one. I just opened up Twitter. That's really credible.
Johns Hopkins is that's where I get it from.
I'm trying to get Hurley on this thing now because he works at Johns Hopkins now. I texted him. Hopefully he was
like, yeah, he should definitely join the. He should do your podcast.
It seems what's really bad is the fucking New York, man. Like that just says that today is the largest single day jump, and it's been like that of deaths. So and that's only going to get worse.
I mean, the biggest
people are packed into this thing like a rat, man. They're like living on top of each other.
Yeah, and the biggest cities are always going to see the biggest hit, not just because they've got a higher population, but because of their population density.
Right.
And I think that, I mean, hey, disclaimer: I am not like a, you know, disease expert or what's that word?
Entomologist?
People that study people who study diseases and how they progress.
Epidemiologist?
Epidemiologist.
Yeah. Epidemic epidemiologist.
I'm not an epidemiologist, but I know enough about science.
Are you a pandemiologist?
No. No.
Non-demiologist.
I know enough. I know just enough to be a little dangerous.
Are you a Scientologist?
Higher population density. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Higher density of population, and in this particular virus's case, lower elevation can help to encourage the spread, particularly places with higher humidity.
Yeah, see, I knew there was something about that. I've been hearing about that, because there's got to be an ideal home living space.
Conditions.
Yeah, conditions. That's the word. Conditions for this virus, and I know. Yeah, well, interesting.
And
so is that why, like, Louisiana, Detroit, is Detroit low elevation? I don't know. New York is pretty low, right?
It's lower. Yeah, it's basically sea level. But places that have high humidity, because Seattle's sea level.
Yeah, there you go.
Whereas places like Denver, we've got high elevation, which, if you know anything about how viruses survive in the
high elevation. Sorry.
As soon as the sun comes out, we've got enough UV radiation to zap those little buggers pretty quickly. So our environmental exposure is going to be significantly less. We're also pretty dry, which means because this is a virus that gets transmitted through air and through water particles, what we call droplets, the droplets evaporate much more quickly here. So the virus just falls to the ground and burns from the sun. And also something else that we have going for us here in Denver is that our population density is a lot less. It's a very dispersed city. It's very spread out. When you look at cities like Chicago or New York or Seattle, they're significantly more dense in terms of population per square mile or whatever metric you want to use. But they're a much denser city. And that's why you'll see in Colorado, we're at, what was it? I think the last number I saw was 5,100 cases here. And we've only seen 150 deaths. Compare that to, the numbers for Washington when, they got their first case maybe 2 weeks before us, a week before us, which is a significant amount of time in this particular case, but I don't think that we're going to catch up to their numbers within a week.
Right. There's different conditions. Yeah, because all the models are changing as the day, like every day is different. And all this, that's why it's like after a while I stopped looking at numbers and stuff, because it was just like, just look at raw deaths and just see that. Like that's it seems like it's really the only, like, I don't know, more consistent. It's like, okay, how bad really is this? Like, because there's been so many varying degrees of like, you get someone like, there's all these people that were getting it, and then all of a sudden now they're better. Or like, for example, Rand Paul, apparently he's like doesn't have it anymore, but he just had like very mild symptoms. But Boris Johnson gets it, and he was in some critical condition earlier. I just read that he's stable now, but good. So that's good for
I don't want anybody to die.
Well, I mean, the leader of one of the largest economies, and like it's not a good look, for anyone.
Right.
But there's a question from someone on Twitch. Poppet Pandemonium asks, has anyone said if it can be transferred by a mosquito? I saw that cats are able to get it.
I haven't seen any evidence of that. Now, granted, I don't read every news source on this. I don't know the answer to that question. I would refer you to your local pathologist, or to the CDC website, or Johns Hopkins. That's CDC or Johns Hopkins. That would be the place that I would look for that type of information. And these reports about being spread by cats and dogs, unless that's being put out by a scientific source, I wouldn't trust it.
Apparently, I think people are just on the tiger train, and so now everyone's just talking about tigers. Like, tigers can get it. First of all, why are they testing a tiger in a zoo when they can be testing humans? You know what I mean? Like, dude, that's what I want to know.
Yeah,
it's like, wait, I guess the tiger is probably expensive, right? Like, if you want to look at things in a value based system, like, I bet you the value of that tiger could be, that could be an expensive tiger. I don't know how valuable these tigers.
But it's a tiger. Like,
I'm just saying, people have different value systems.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I would recommend that you trust the experts, and I think that's going back to your lessons question. Another lesson that we can learn as a society, we've fallen away from trusting the experts and fallen towards trusting our local talking head, whoever that may be.
Right. Cullah.
Trust the experts.
Don't trust Cullah.
Somebody who is a pathologist in virology is significantly better as a source than virtually anybody else that you're going to ask. Ask the experts.
Yeah.
Epidemiologists in virology. Okay. Yeah. Ask them. Don't listen to, corporate media or even your local media. They're trying to get viewership. They got a profit motive.
Most of the local media is owned by giant corporation anyway. Like I remember seeing, I don't know if you guys saw that crazy viral video where they spliced together all local media and how everyone read from a script about like they got orders from on high to like talk about these very specific things. And it's like, wow, this is a whole network of like, it's a sham. Everyone used to trust these things. Like they used to be like, oh, these are our local people. Like my great uncle John McCullah, he was a news anchor for TMJ4.
Oh really?
And when there was only like three there was only 3 stations on the fucking television, and he was one of the like prime time news guys. And so it was like, he is the Walter Cronkite of Milwaukee, like in southeast Wisconsin. Like he's the person
like local
where you trust. But he wouldn't. That was a different time. They also had different laws back then, like the fairness doctrine. I remember they had different things where it's like, if you're going to be a news outlet, then you have to have certain guidelines for how you do the news, as opposed to when cable news kind of came around. It was just kind of like, well, there's no really guidelines. It's kind of just like, you're a business. You have no oversight or expectation of new. Like these are classified as entertainment. People have to know that. Like, that this isn't. That's not just some.
I wouldn't.
It's not some pejorative that people use. Like, oh, this. Like, I guess infotainment, some people call it. Like, it's good to be entertained for sure when you're getting information. Like but if you're
looking for truthful answers about like what the hell is going on with this virus, I'm sorry, but none of the 3 main news media, cable news media, is a good source for this kind of stuff.
No,
not Fox
News,
not MSNBC, and not CNN. Those are not good sources.
Okay,
these are people that are looking for viewership.
Susanna Baker asks on Facebook, do you worry about our trajectory of isolation and loneliness continuing on after the quarantine is over, or do you think that we will come out of it with a renewed sense of community?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know.
Like, is it going to affect people? Like, is that depression going to continue? Like, the trajectory?
I guess that would probably depend on the individual. Like, for me, like I said, like, my life hasn't really changed. I'm a pretty introverted guy. Even before this whole thing, I went to Costco on Fridays when it was the least busy, and I go to our local grocery store on Sunday mornings for the rest of the stuff I need for my meal prep, and anything else I would need for the week, because that's when everybody's at church, and I want to miss the crowd. So I'm still doing that. My life is no different. Now, will people walk away with a renewed sense of community and valuation of their relationships in their everyday life? That's going to depend on you, man. Like, whether or not you're gonna make that leap in your mind of that change in perspective.
What do you think as a from a society standpoint? Like, if you were to guess, like, because not everyone is as introverted.
I don't know.
And
I really don't know. I would hope that we would walk away with a renewed sense of community, and if that is going to be the outcome, I can see that being championed and led by the millennial generation. I think that we're going to be the ones to take the mantle on a lot of different issues in society in the next 30 years.
It's the
not
generational
just because
shift
of our generation, but like because of our generational understanding of our value systems, and being the most educated generation that this country's ever produced, being the most diverse generation that this country's ever produced. Things are
the most straddled in debt.
Yeah.
The first time there's ever been a lower life expectancy.
Yeah. But I mean, that means everybody at least has some type
record
of shared
productivity, but
maybe?
record productivity, but stagnant wages for the past, since 30
40
years. Yeah, 40 years. Like,
if
I were to answer that,
I really hope so.
Because she said at the beginning of her question, says, do you worry about trajectory of isolation and loneliness continuing on? I think that if people are really lonely and isolated, I don't think it'll continue if the quarantine is over. I think that what I would worry about is like people expecting it to be like, I remember when this first started happening, I heard this quote was, people are preparing for a blizzard when they should be preparing for a winter. And people in Wisconsin know that. And it's like, it's essentially people's expectations of this are constantly changing, and people's, I think, the trajectory, it depends on the individual if they're using this as an opportunity to to use this isolation and loneliness to be something that they can get something from, if they're cultivating something in themselves. Which, by the way, if anyone wants to needs to send me some videos for my album release on April 27th, go to Cullah.com/contact and send me a video of something that you're doing to cultivate yourself. But anyway, I think, like, if people are going to use this time to be useful in that sense and to just chill, because there's no sports, right? So there's not even this
no distraction,
right? There's no distraction. Like, the only distraction is the fear and and that's the main distraction, and
your lack of discipline.
Actually, this is a perfect opportunity for people to do discipline, because it's like, what else do you have every day to do? Like, and exactly. My life hasn't changed too much, but I've got a renewed sense of, like, my life. I mean, it's changed because obviously I had tours that were canceled, and I'd have gigs every weekend. But the weekdays, day to day, I would be in my studio working every day, and I would be going out very rarely, like during the week, only to do errands or to do things like that. But I'd be working from home most of the time, and so you get to this when you're working for yourself, you get to decide when and where to do things. I end up working probably. I work all day. I wake up and I work, and then I take a couple hour breaks, and then I work in the evening, and then I take another break, and then I work until 2 a.m. usually. But
that discipline kicks in once you've set that term for whatever you want your break to be, and once you hit that term, the discipline comes in when you decide that you're going to go back to your work, and that process of, I told myself I'm going to do this, so I'm going to do it. And that's kind of
right, because otherwise you're a liar.
A piece of it. So there's I'll just take another 15. No, like, if you told yourself you're going to do it, or you set a goal for yourself for the day, then you should do it. Right. And getting to the question of will the isolation continue?
Some people might be really affected by it.
So my personal opinion, this is again not professional. I'm not a pathologist. I'm not an epidemiologist. But my personal opinion is that we should probably maintain this state of social distancing and minimal contact for probably end of June. That would be what I would consider to be safe, provided that we don't see a big second wave following after this initial, which we're not even at the peak of.
It all depends on people's social distancing and the weather and the climate and the conditions of things.
And basically, the better we can as a society be disciplined about making sure that we're following these guidelines and protocols, the shorter that the overall process is going to be. So if we can...
But I can't go on dates, and I can't go to shows, Shane.
Oh no.
I can't do it. I can't do it anymore.
Be a millennial and date online, man. That's
so lame.
I met my girlfriend online.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of lame.
No, it's an interesting thing.
It's really good for introverts.
It's good to connect with people. It can make connections that you wouldn't have otherwise. It's not any, I shouldn't say it's so lame. I've met really nice people on dating apes for sure. And
I mean, it's kind of lame then.
It's just not for me. I like being face to face. Like, there's always a risk when you use that. There's always a risk that you can connect on the internet through this, and you have these limited interactions. But my first whole thing is like, get to a meeting in person ASAP, because otherwise I feel like it's not real. It's like more like some people don't take them really seriously, and some people do. Some take it really seriously. Some people are just doing it for fun as a game. But I don't know. You can just go and say hi to someone. Not now. Don't do this now. That's the thing. It's like dating's on hold, right? Like dating's on hold, which is probably good for everyone. I like this. I don't know when has there been a time where people can where our whole society can just slow down, take a breath, and
shit, we needed it.
I think so. And now like people like myself, I'm like working even more, like, because I'm just like, I'm like, oh, now I got to really kick this shit. Well, also my album is coming out pretty soon. So like I have a lot of work to do, but the
stars are aligning.
Right. It's I was going to go on tour and, like set all that stuff up, but now I have all this. Now I'm just going to be at home and play just like my whole life.
Right.
Just like my whole life, being on my computer and making noises and but now I'm connecting with more people. But I hope
we answered your question.
I think so. I think she
so.
just said, "Do you worry about it, or do you think we're going to come out as a renewed?" I think it'll be good. Like I think, of course, the deaths and this the terror of this is not fun. But unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look into it, I was creation is a function of destruction. And death is, if you want to, death is the only possible with life, and vice versa. Like you can't live without death.
Dying.
And people are constantly, parts of ourselves and our ideas and our constructs and our flesh and our, every part of humanity is constantly, and life in general is constantly dying and being created over and over and over and over. Every breath you take is a death and a rebirth, in a sense. So I think when death comes knocking and starts staring at people, I think people in America especially, we've been really accustomed to our comforts, and we've been almost we've almost become numb, and I don't know about numb to a degree in a lot of senses, because people are being bombarded with psychological coercion constantly by people in society, and but also people are so comfortable at the same time. And you mentioned grocery stores, like you just go to the tap and just press a button and you get unlimited water. It's like crazy, like these, or just taking all this stuff for granted. So I think when death comes and staring, and there's a song about that song, but when death comes looking at you and it's right there and it's starting to, even if it's hype, and let's say this is, I don't think this disease is obviously not just it's living up to some of the hype, no doubt. Yeah. But and that's part of the whole thing, is everyone is being faced with death, and that when people get in touch with that a little bit more, I think things really start to happen. Life begins again, because you can't. It's it's cyclical. Real. Yeah, things get real. It gets real. Like where people are getting perspective for like someone mentioned to me about how a lot of difference between the Europeans and Americans because of World War II, and about how the people in France and England, there's bombs and shit. Those motherfuckers got invaded, terrorized, destroyed by bombs. Like they experienced real like America never has been the United States of America has never been invaded by. The closest was Pearl Harbor, which is Hawaii, which is halfway across the world, and that was the closest. 9/11, I guess, maybe that's a crazy, now COVID has taken more than that. So we just haven't been prepared for it.
9/11 is this huge event in our history of this huge traumatic thing, whereas the European countries were literally bombed to rubble. They're not really even comparable situations, if you're being honest.
So my point is they've experienced this, and that's I think why maybe some of their systems are more prepared for this, is because they've experienced they're these. Built for it. Yeah, they've had, and it's been years, and and I don't we've gone our own way in a lot of for good, for better, and for worse. And I think we're I don't know. I was talking to someone recently and thinking about how the ideological shifts of the millennials and stuff is really more of a return to a different trajectory as rather than a like
Right,
deviations to
right.
something new, or like something that's come out with that in the last 50 years. I think like a lot of principles that I've like absorbed as part of my value system when it comes to looking things from political philosophy, is like from 100 years ago, like what just so happens to be the last time there was a Spanish flu. Well, last time there was a big pandemic. It's like, okay, well, maybe we're equipped with these. Maybe we're equipped with some new ideas here that can actually.
But how much have we really learned? Like,
right.
Yeah.
You said we're educated.
I think what you're
but...
describing is that the Hegelian idea of you shift to one way and then you shift to another way, and eventually there's some kind of middle ground where philosophy and politics in America has for quite some time shifted in one particular direction in response to a previous shift in the opposite direction,
right?
Which was a response to the previous shift in the opposite direction, and it just kind of cyclical like that. And eventually, the trajectory will play itself out the way that it really needs to.
It's about to rain. I'm gonna close my window.
And I mean, we'll see what that looks like in the future. I don't necessarily know. I don't know what it's going to hold, and I don't know enough about the world and the universe to make any predictions. But I just hope that we can maintain that decency, like we were talking before. That decency and kindness can reign supreme.
So
I really hope that.
What kind of segueing into this? You talked about Hegel and stuff, and what can philosophy do for us? And you mentioned self-discipline. Obviously, there's a philosophy to that. I'm sure you've had. I remember you were the first person to introduce me to Musashi, the Book of Five Rings, right? Yeah. It's five, right?
Yeah, the Book of Five Rings.
And how much do you think people, when I talk to people about cultivating, and I'm asking them how they cultivate, kind of just seeing what people can do. I mean, I have ways that I do it, and I have suggestions and ideas when people ask me, well, what do you do? My friend Tina just messaged me today and was like, what fills you with life, or what fills you with this stuff? Like asking these questions, like, okay, how do you cultivate yourself? How do you think philosophy can help us through times of crisis like this?
So I think if for most people, if you're going to be reading primary text in philosophy, the number one thing it's going to give you is a headache followed by a nap. For most people. Generally, the ideas behind philosophy, though, they do virtually everything in society. And I was actually talking about this with some of my employees the other day about how in America, we're still very much fighting the fight between the French Revolution and the Enlightenment. We're still really kind of dealing with that and trying to hash out those issues. Can
you summarize those main ideas of the French Revolution? And that are how do you?
Yeah, that's a tough question.
I guess what do you mean by that? Is that
honestly,
God is dead and Nietzsche versus?
That's a little bit past what I'm talking about. I really wish that I could speak more intelligently on that particular topic.
From my understanding, the Enlightenment was a rediscovery of primal self, in a way, like they're of myth, rather, like the importance of myth and the importance of things like. And then with this Industrial Revolution, I feel like we've shifted away, and I think now we're achieving another connection, like it's coming back into it, at least I believe, and this is part of like what I've been looking at my mission as a musician, to actually promote myth as not something that just isn't true that someone talks to you about, that like that's just a myth, as like it's a
discourse in human nature is what it is.
Absolutely, it's a reflection of it is human nature. Like stories are storehouses. Like we've had these problems before in greater amounts, and we,
right.
and we've gone through it. We've gone through it before.
Yeah.
So like we have these stories.
I wish I could answer for you, about Enlightenment and French Revolution and all that. You had brought up Friedrich Nietzsche though, and I think his analysis of the general trajectory of Western democratic, when they use the term liberal, but that's philosophically liberal democracies. I think his trajectory, assessed trajectory of that is pretty accurate, in that what we're seeing today is we're still seeing this clash, philosophically speaking,
really
play out between different, factions within each society, and they're vying for power in the vacuum that was created by Nietzsche's prescribed death of God, where basically we're seeing a degradation of the value structure in Western liberal democracies, and a reformatting of our value systems, and you can see that playing out nation to nation, where each nation kind of, it's an evolution. Some nations retain more characteristics of their previous iterations, generation to generation. I think in America we've seen quite a big shift, from the generation before our parents to the one between us and our parents to us. There have been huge amounts of cultural and philosophical changes within those 4 generations. Whereas maybe in other countries, that might not necessarily be the case. I'm sure that they've changed as well, but maybe not quite drastically.
And do you think that's part to do with the global nature of things too? Like, I don't know.
Globalization.
You're talking about these things are being reformatted. I had thought about this for a while, and I remember talking to people about how it's kind of up to us now to determine the future. And this is, I think, part of why I'm talking about how I feel, at least, like that our generation is looking to the resolutions and the resolve of the past, of what happened in the past, to understand how we can move forward. And I see that because we have to look back, because we have like what's happening now doesn't seem viable. So we're like, okay, well, what were the other options here? What
worked?
What's going on? Like, I feel what people talk about the death of the family unit, but then you look at the historical context of that, and you'd be like, well, the family unit, the nuclear family, is really only a newer thing too. Like, it's not like humans have always done that. So it's and we talk about the concepts of marriage. Like, we grew up with our 1 in 2 kids in school would have their parents be divorced. 50% divorce rate. Like, it's lowered now, I think, but like,
well, that's that shift.
This is a huge value, and it's
influenced by so many different factors. And I mean, technology being one of them. And I think that an advantage that our generation has that no generation in the history of humanity has ever had is that we have access to all the information, all of it. It's at our fingertips. We are the first generation to grow up with access to all the information you could possibly want, at the click of a button. And really, you're being negligent if you're not learning about the world in this time and space.
You have a responsibility.
You do. You have a responsibility to learn about the world and to learn about history and to learn about what things have been done in the past and what we can learn from that. And not that I'm trying to, like, you better do this, but I really feel that responsibility, and I've taken it upon myself to try to learn as much as I can. And granted, I'm not as disciplined as I need to be either, but I think there is some room for self-love and for self-forgiveness as well. But you should still try. You should strive for it. Strive for learning about the world and cultivating yourself, and
trademark,
making sure that you're right, that you're looking at what's going on in you and trying to figure out, okay, this is who I am now. This is who I want to be. How do I get there?
Right.
And recognizing that it's probably going to take a lot longer than you thought it would.
It's a long game, you know. It's a long.
Really is.
It's a long game.
Really
it's your
is.
whole life. You're not gonna, like, you're not going to be. And that's the thing is a lot. I think it's a struggle for a lot of people because people don't know. They're getting false information. They're being told that they can or can't do certain things. Like, we're privileged in the sense of, like, our parents lived in a very I don't know. I'm trying to describe the household that your dad and my mom grew up in. Let's say, like,
chaotic.
Like,
absolutely.
They were open-minded in a lot of ways, but I lost you there.
Yeah, my phone is on low battery right now.
Shit.
Yeah. What's our timestamp at?
It is just about an hour.
Might have to go inside. Okay, I might have to go inside and to plug it in. I'd have to take the headphones off, but
well, we can
like 20%.
Yeah, we can go till you die.
Okay. I mean, literally, I have no other choice. I'm going until I die, and then I'll be dead.
And I guess the point of what I was trying to get at was there's a privilege in education. Education was there was chaos, but education is a pretty valuable thing. Like, my mom described her education, and even though her sisters and her mom and the dynamics of that stuff, like, told her to do certain things in the society, she was very skeptical, and that her dad, our grandpa, actually encouraged that skepticism and encouraged her to be so, like, she was getting encouraged to question and to think about how, if you don't like what's around you, figure out ways to change it, and figure out how you can take the power for things. But and the education aspect is incredibly important. Like, so now with people, I wonder how, partially I think because, like, people's schools are halted, right? Like, people can't go to school, people can go online, but like you said, our generation can just go online and fucking just look it up. Like, when I was interested about something as a kid, I would just go online and start looking, and it allowed me to discover deep parts of who I am now. Like, I've been talking lately with friends about Emerson and about how reading Self-Reliance and reading about his concepts of the soul and concepts of walking and just, like, basic things of life about and the idea of in Self-Reliance is that society actually almost works antithetical to the true nature of yourself, and that you have to understand this, that it's not necessarily like, oh, society bad, don't ever trust it, there's no room for society, but at the same time, like, you have to understand that it is not really going to encourage those deep truths inside of you at its core, because that's not what it's made to do. It's made for conformity. Like, that's where the whole non-conformist idea is. It's like, and it's made
for reproduction of the species and everything.
Yeah, it's
that's
useful. It's useful. I'm not saying society is worthless.
Perpetuation of itself, and sometimes at the detriment of individuals within it. But yeah, I don't know. Society's pretty wild, man. And in order to cultivate yourself, trademark. I'm
gonna quote. That's a Lao Tzu quote.
What's that?
The whole thing. Cultivate yourself, then your virtue will become real. Cultivate your family, then your virtue will grow. Cultivate your community, then it'll be abound. Then cultivate your nation, cultivate your world, and then you start to see the world. Then you start to see other people as yourself and your community as yourself, because it's essentially everything comes from within and outwards. It spreads outwards. Yeah. So like
exactly,
there is this idea of society, but ultimately you can't control what the society does, and you can't control what other people do, but you can cultivate yourself, and you can control what your beliefs are. And I think that's what you're talking about, self-discipline. Very recently, I was just dove down a Stoic rabbit hole of Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius's meditations, and all these just these concepts of this, so that the only thing you can control is belief, your own belief, and everything stems from that. All your actions, everything that your reactions, everything comes from how what you believe in and how you believe it. And I think if people understand how, if they, as an artist, like, constraint actually is beneficial, and like it allows you to think more clearly. When you have only certain constraints, you can react more efficiently because there's little variables to weigh. It's like, and I think that's what an ethical code can do for you.
Almost forces you to be more creative because you're given a constraint.
Of course, yeah.
I'm not an artist, but that would be what I would guess.
And I'm just trying to draw the parallel between that and the idea of knowing what little there is that you can control, because that's a constraint. A constraint, whole constraint on your life. Like, there's a story of this Navy SEAL, this woman who was in Afghanistan or something recently, and it was this whole book about using the Socratic method. I forget what it's called. Cognitive behavioral therapy, which is essentially just the Socratic method applied in a more clinical sense, with some modern psychology standpoint, like
Socratic method of science, basically.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, be aware of yourself and what you're doing and what you're feeling and what everything is going on. And the Stoics, they would write down everything. Like, today I ate this, and that's just how it made me feel this, and I only ate these things, and these are the things I did wrong. And these are the things I like. The value of journaling and recording and all that stuff. But this woman who was in war, she got, a helicopter crashed, or she got captured by someone, and she had broken her legs, and her arms were all fucked up and everything, and she was taken and as a prisoner and then raped like multiple times by multiple people and stuff. And they were talking to her, and there was basically her take on how she dealt with it, and about how because she came out of it obviously with some trauma, you'd imagine, but like actually was in a pretty, compared to a lot of other people that might be in that situation, she was prepared, and she was prepared to deal with this traumatic event because she had training in this cognitive behavioral therapy, where she was able to understand in these moments of extreme pain and trauma that she can only control so much, and there's only certain things she can believe in, and that she was able to, that just showed you it basically, they were giving this example and asking her about how she dealt with it, about how she hasn't become or developed all the psychosis because of it. You'd think someone going through this would develop, at least minor levels of, wow, it's really raining. Do you hear that? It's hailing now.
Yeah.
Damn. It's like,
but if you don't build yourself up and build your defense mechanisms prior to an event like that, then you're going to crumble.
Dude, it's really coming down.
Is that the rain?
Yeah, dude. It's wow. It's hailing.
Jeez.
They're like, I wonder if I close it, might be a little better.
Just tell Mother Nature to shut the fuck up. Like, trying to do a podcast.
That'll be a little better. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to know, and I think that comes with discipline and comes with like a code and a perspective. And I think, we were talking about Nietzsche, and the idea of nihilism is very appealing to many people now. And I think, and the ideas of existentialism and stuff, like, they're very appealing because it feels like we live in and this, partly the scientific community's dogma kind of perpetuates some of these ideas of materialism and the concepts of, just we're all particles, and there's nothing more. We're nothing more than just a dumb universe, an accident in a dumb universe.
Right.
You know, and
I think that those ideas are appealing because there's a lot of truth to what they're talking about there.
Yeah.
At least in my perspective, there's a lot of truth to it, and that's why it can be so appealing. But you also have to look at the opposite side of it. Well, you're still alive, so what are you going to do about it? And my approach to escape the trap of nihilism was basically to recognize that something that Jordan Peterson, whatever, for better or worse, whatever you think of him, this particular saying that he had, really moved me and helped me to get through that period of my life where I was dealing with those issues, where he says that your meaning and purpose in your life is directly proportional to the amount of responsibility that you willingly take on.
Right. I saw that. Yeah. That was amazing. I showed it to my family.
I think it's really cool. And I mean, I don't necessarily agree with the man on most things, but I think that particular thing that he's talking about.
He's a great lecturer, and he knows what he knows what he's talking about with a lot of different things, history, psychology, mythology. He
knows a lot.
When it comes to politics and economic, he debated Slavoj Žižek. Did you see that? It was in defense. It was capitalism versus socialism, and it was why is Jordan Peterson, a psychologist, defending capitalism? What? Right. It was just there's some big online names. Let's just get a big crowd, and it was actually they just had a discussion. They didn't even really argue with each other. They just gave each other's points and had a few laughs, and that was it. Which was cool, I guess. Well,
and let's not delude ourselves into thinking that the two categories are mutually exclusive.
Right, exactly. That's why I hate those debate prompts, man. I hate that shit.
You can have that.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think that's something that really bothers me about those types of conversations is that people get it in their mind that the two subjects that people are talking about are mutually exclusive.
Right. It's a false dilemma.
Right. Yeah. False dichotomy.
Yeah.
Where, and you'll see that all over in philosophy, and that's something that somebody who's understood philosophy and reads it will be able to pick up on stuff like that. Where you'll see in philosophy where for 200 years they'll be talking about A is this and B is this. And then somebody 200 years later says, actually, you know what? No, there's multiple options outside of A and B, and none of them are more right or wrong than the other. It's just a matter of what fits your thing. And
it's both and neither. When you're given a question of this or that, it's both and neither always. And that's what's crazy about it is the whole. And that's what is I've been wrapping my head around with this idea of death and life more recently is really trying to fully understand and explore darkness and because that's what we're in right now. We're in some darkness, and descending into darkness is the best way to get grounded. So you can understand, because in the caves this is where we originated. We're within going deep within ourselves is really what gets us moving forward. But what was it you were talking about? There was something I wanted to continue that thought. I think I forgot it. I think I lost it. We were talking about the Jordan Peterson idea about responsibility.
Yeah, the responsibility. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I saw that too, and it made me really understand, because the one thing that really hit home for me, what he was saying was, he's it is a moral, you're being immoral if you don't take your responsibility seriously. That actually you are doing it. You're not just hurting yourself when you're hurting
everybody around.
You hurt your family. This is exactly what I'm talking about. With this, the opposite of the cultivation. If you're not actually taking responsibility for yourself, and then you hurt yourself. Okay. That people could say, well, let people hurt themselves. It's not, they're not hurting anyone else.
But it's not. But it's not just that.
Right.
It's not just that.
When someone, we are all interconnected at the same time. There is a society. We can't ignore it. We have to be in a society. And so this is just the way things are, man. So if if you don't take on that responsibility, you are hurting the people that you love. And you know, I'm not trying to like blame the victim or coerce you in a sense. And people might say, oh well, you know,
but you're doing harm.
What about the people who are born in poverty and have no option? Like, I think it's society's responsibility. I think it's the responsibility of those who aren't in those positions to be able to take that responsibility to empower other people. So, like, these leaders that we have in politics that are feckless, and they're not inspiring the people. They're not inspiring and educating the way that they should, and. You know, it's not just politics, you know, it's your community leaders and stuff. Like there are so many people that are working every day to try to make this happen. You know, of course,
there are people who are actively working against it.
Right. And they've, you know, it's really hard to go against the machine. You know what I mean?
Or even
Paul Bunyan fucking lost to the machine, man. He fucking lost. Like that myth, dude. We're told that shit. Is at early age. Yeah. Even the greatest giant motherfucking human, the best motherfucking frontiersman, cream of the crop, rise to the top and gets destroyed by a fucking machine that barely even tried. And like this is the value. This is the myth that we're told about machine. And you know, for a lot of it's kind of it can do that. It's fucking it's true, man. It's like a true myth. You know, I'm not saying that it's that, but like this is the myth that we're told.
If you extrapolate that story, what is Paul Bunyan's responsibility after losing to the machine? What is his job after that? Is his job to continue to work and toil and, you know, roll his proverbial boulder up a mountain? Or is his job to learn how to use that damn machine so he can be better? You know, I don't know the answer to that question, but like somewhere in that there's
happens
a
after
step. And what's his responsibility? Does he need to be consoling to those around him who hold that same job title but are now going to be finding themselves out of work? Is his job to lead a labor union?
I
don't know the answer.
What did Paul Bunyan do after?
I have no idea.
I don't think. Yeah, the myth doesn't deal with that.
Gave his big ox a big hug and.
It's like, let's go to Miami.
A big hug and that was it. Like,
let's go to the beach, bro.
Let's get.
We got machines doing this shit now. I don't gotta do this shit anymore. I can just go outside. I can just go outside and fucking enjoy the day now. I can cut down shit if I want to. Sure, like he got good at it.
Universal basic income.
Dude, that's what it felt like today when I walked around and saw all these people. It's like, dude, I walked by this hill, and there was these two girls, this mom with these two. I was assuming it's a mom, or I'm assuming, and these two girls that this older girl came down this hill on her bike, and she was fucking loving it, and she you know, she got a little wobbly, and then she fell and like fell off it at the very bottom of it, and I was like, oh, and I was as I was walking right by, I was like, oh my gosh, like, are you okay? And she just saw her just be like. Like she wasn't crying, but she was just like, and then I look to her mom, and her mom, she has it all on video, and she's laughing, and she's just like, are you okay? Are you okay? And then the second daughter comes down, like, and her whole thing's wobbling. She's younger, and she doesn't fall over, but I was just like, wow, this is such a beautiful moment, like of these kids
I could just
going down the hill.
Imagine like a propaganda commercial, like, this is your world, and then, you know, it's a shot of an empty hill, that same hill, and then this is your world on UBI. It's the video of the girl falling off her bike. Like, I could just see that, you know, that just seems like it would fit.
Well, her mom was there now. Her mom would probably be working if, you know,
right.
She can go on a Monday,
maybe
a Tuesday.
Falls off the bike and.
I just thought that was great. It was a great lesson to me. I was walked by it. I'm like, oh. She just, even though she knew she could crash, she still did it. She did crash. And the younger daughter was able to be like, oh damn, she crashed, I better be careful.
I just saw my horse crash, and I'm still gonna do this. That's pretty ballsy, actually.
I just thought that it wasn't that crazy of a hill, but you know, it seemed like they weren't,
it's the principle.
Right. They were pretty little. So, you know, I don't know. I got a nice I got some some good feelings out of seeing that. You know. All right,
I got things saying I'm at 10% now.
All right,
probably got another 10 minutes maybe.
Sweet. Yeah, we're at 118. We can start wrapping things up.
Okay. Yeah. So any questions from the audience?
Peter Houden-Neby has been saying some interesting things here. He's Peter. I don't know where you're from, Peter. He's just been commenting. I guess he didn't have any questions.
Okay.
Yeah, no. I realized this didn't go out on YouTube, unfortunately. God damn it. Something happened, and it didn't send out. But it's on Facebook and Twitch, and so we've been...
Okay.
But, yeah, I don't think there's... Cassie here earlier said that she said that the USPS is in jeopardy right now, and without additional funding, Grandma might not get her letter. Damn, I did see that. The USPS is just under dire straits right now, and that the United States Postal Service.
Yeah. That she might not get a letter? What does that mean?
We were talking earlier about sending Grandma a letter.
Oh, yeah.
This was an earlier comment. But yeah, I mean...
The letter's got COVID-19 on it anyway, so, like...
Yeah, just ship them down, ship them to the North Pole.
Just like, yeah, it'll be fine.
COVID can't live in the North Pole, right?
I don't know.
Does it affect elves?
It probably can.
As a scientist, Shane, do you know if COVID-19 affects humans the same way it affects elves?
Speaking as an official scientist, it is twice as deadly for elves.
Okay, here's a good question by Peter. He says, how do you live overall?
How do I live overall?
Yeah, that's his question. I think he's got a different... I think he might... English... He says SP... Maybe he's... Are you Swedish?
How do I live overall?
Is he Swedish? Peter, are you Swedish?
I like... I follow after Albert Camus. One of his most famous sayings, rather, is I wake up in the morning and I say, well, should I have my cup of coffee or should I kill myself? That's
facing death every day, man.
After the author, that's every day. And every day I make the conscious decision to live and to have my coffee and to do my job and to take my responsibilities seriously and try to take care of myself and show the people that I care about them. And I draw a lot of my personal values from my upbringing in Christianity, but also from Buddhism. And a good summary of that would be basically kindness is my religion, and I try to exhibit that to the best of my ability. Everybody has faults and nobody's perfect, so I'm not going to claim that I'm an expert on that at all by any means, but I am putting in the effort, and I'm trying to be disciplined about it. I'm trying to be the best version of myself that I possibly can be. And recently in my life, in the last couple of years, that has included giving up substances of abuse, which also worked out nicely because I became a federal employee and I was already used to not doing that kind of stuff. I also recently gave up drinking alcohol because it was wasting my money and hurting my health. And that's something that I'm trying to do to be better.
We can all use a little substantive abuse.
The next thing on my list is to become disciplined in exercising, which I've not been. I've been able to maintain a relative stable weight just by controlling my eating and portion control and that kind of thing, and eating healthy food.
Right.
But I know that I need to exercise, and I know that that's something that's going to be vital long term for me. So that's kind of the next thing on my list. And then the second thing on my list is decreasing my caffeine intake, because I know that although the effects are minor, can have negative effects on my life and well-being. So that's kind of,
it's good to know,
I guess, how
it's good to have that discipline, and then when the time comes, you can be like, yeah, I'm gonna have a fucking whiskey, or yeah, I'm gonna have a wine, or when you have the discipline to know I can survive without this, then there's no crutch, aspect.
Right.
Peter says,
right, and
yeah, he's Swedish. So
Swedish. Okay.
So I'm assuming he lives with overalls on. That's probably what he was asking. Do you live
24/7?
Yeah.
24/7.
All Swedish people have overalls. Swedish.
Yeah. Overall. Yeah. I mean, I roll my boulder up
live
the mountain
overall
every day, just like everybody else.
Yeah, you just live overall.
It's just I try to be very conscious of what I'm doing and in the moment. And I know you're trying to make a joke, but
no, he says cool sounds really awake, mate. I'm assuming he just means awoke.
I wouldn't consider myself part of the woke crowd.
No, you're not woke. But are you awake?
I try to avoid grouping myself into any kind of generalized group. I don't know. I don't really like that. I've always kind of been more of a solitary, or like, I have a significant other. I have my family. That's all I really need. I don't really need to be part of a larger social group, anything more than just participating in society. I don't have a religion I belong to. I don't have any clubs I belong to. I don't have any groups of friends that I really consistently am hanging out with. I'm very comfortable on my own and doing that. So I don't know. You're honestly probably one of the few people that I have consistent, meaningful conversations with.
Now it's public for everyone.
What's that?
We should have been recording these the whole time.
Yeah, right. We should have.
5 years old.
And you and my mom and Sarah are probably the top 3 people that I talk to most frequently, other than people in my daily life.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's pretty good. I think I'm pretty lucky. I think I have pretty much a good life trajectory planned out here, and as long as I stay disciplined, as long as I remember to be kind to people, I think things are probably going to work out just fine. And I really hope that that's the case for everybody. I really hope that everybody can find whatever it is in their particular situation that will help them to live a good life and to enjoy life, and to be able to be on their deathbed and be able to look back and be happy about it. It
sounds like a nice ideal.
Yeah,
I think it's possible to at least improve.
Try to live that way, knowing that you could literally die any day, and life is very short. You can die any day, and being that I work at a hospital, people die there every day. Every day, people die, and this is part of it.
All right. On that note,
but
I think.
Yeah, that grim note.
That's good to put in perspective, man.
I don't mean to come off like that, but
no. Yeah. You, after a great, arousing, inspirational, thing there, you got to put the caveat in there.
Right. It's very, very similar to what Camus would do. Of, everybody dies, but life is also wonderful. So enjoy it.
Yep.
And yeah, but don't forget that you will die, and it could be at any time. But enjoy it.
You got no choice.
So,
In fact, well, you do have a choice, I suppose, but the choice should be painfully obvious. But hopefully, so hopefully some people learn some things about, from this conversation, and appreciate you coming on. And now I know this whole video conferencing setup can work, and I appreciate you being the lab rat for that. I know you're used to sterile testing environments, so. This is
I'm very comfortable with it. If I somehow manage to get a webcam, which I just need to buy one, then we'll be able to do a full video conference via my computer, and we won't have this time constraint based on the battery life of my phone. So,
yeah, you can get them. You know, I saw Logitech's got some 1080p ones for $20.
Yeah.
I got
And I
two
know that
720p. I'm using two.
My Dungeons and Dragons group would very much appreciate having a webcam video of me too, but
Yeah.
kind of a private person, so.
Well, thanks for
okay. Yeah,
thanks
we'll
for
next time,
coming out into the digital sphere, showing your face, and telling us a little bit about
Of course.
how you tick. And it's always inspirational to talk to you,
course.
Shane. It's always a good time.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll
Always a good time talking
play
with
some
you.
fucking leagues soon.
Yeah.
All
All
right,
right,
man.
man.
Peace, brother. Stay safe.
Yeah, love you.
Love you too, man.
Yep. You too.
See ya.
All right, take it easy.
Click.